Ella LeBain. That's how I pronounce it, I hope.
Yes,
UFO
yes.
researcher, author of many UFO books, UFOs in the Cosmic Zoo. It's a series, Who's in the Cosmic Zoo. You're a researcher. You're very much into the end of times theories related to ETs. You're an ET experiencer. You're also a member of MUFON Colorado and MUFON National, but we're going to talk all about you. The fans will know about you by the time this is over. But what's the latest? We just heard a couple of weeks ago, I think 10 days ago, the Pope made a statement related to the very vague statement, but a statement related to the possibilities of UFOs. And you're an expert on the whole Vatican connection, which we've heard David Grush say not too long ago that the Vatican was actually in possession of the very first UFO that crashed back in the 40s.
Yes, in Italy and during World War II. And yeah, they've been studying this, researching this since then. They're very much involved. Um, my fourth book, Covenants, has the history of their agreements during World War II. So it all goes back to World War II. And anyone who studies world wars knows that they're all connected. So World War III, which many of us believe has already begun in the Middle East, it's all connected. And in the prophecy, the Church of Rome, which is how they were viewed in the past, which sits on seven hills, which is Rome, which is now today's Vatican because they changed their name, which in Latin means divining serpent, FYI, play a starring role in in unfolding the end time prophecy, which has to do with the times of the Antichrist. So they're backing that, and how they're going to manipulate the information about disclosure. They've been studying this for a very long time. They have two of the world's most sophisticated telescopes, Earth based. One is on Vatican Hill in Rome, and the other one is in Tucson, Arizona, on Mount Graham. And they've named their telescopes Lucifer. Yes, so no accident there. Um, in my second book, I unpack all the names of God and the gods in the Jewish Bible, and unfortunately, the English Bible doesn't do it any justice because they've all been mistranslated, and just the words God and Lord are used throughout the entire Old Testament, which doesn't help an English reader to understand the whole cast of characters, the who's who in the Old Testament, and who are these gods. So I've unpacked that, and I came across a very big mistranslation from the Hebrew Bible into the Latin Vulgate Bible, which was written by who they now call Saint Rome. He was commissioned by the Pope to write the Old Testament in Latin. That was the very first translation. And from Isaiah chapter 14, he completely mistranslated a Hebrew word, which was another name, which was the only time it's actually mentioned in the Old Testament, which is the word Halel, which means he who boasts in a foolish rage. So it's kind of a derogatory name for the being who we call Satan. Anyway, Jerome mistranslated that to Lucifer, which is a Latin name for light bearer. So light bearer and someone who boasts in a foolish rage doesn't really have the same meaning. Would you agree?
Definitely not. That's very strange. That's interesting about the telescope named Lucifer as well. I notice you also talk about the kind of the chariots of the gods theory that maybe aliens could have been mistaken for gods. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. I mean, and so what I unpack in my second book is defining, linguistics, language, because if we can't get on the same page with language, then we're just lost in all kinds of misunderstandings. So there's titles and there's names. So uh, God and Lord are titles, right? Even the word gods with an S at the end, the plurality, is still a title. Okay, so the names tell us who is who and where they come from. But what the English Bible does is they just give you titles. They don't give you names. So it's all hidden in the Hebrew. So one of the names, as we just talked about, is that is Halel, which is Satan, which is the rebel. So the word Satan is another title, which just means rebel or adversary. And nobody really knows what his real original name was, because we get the story that he was ousted out of heaven and he lost his first estate, which was his position, and was cast down to the earth. And he managed to persuade 1/3 of heaven's angels to rebel against the Almighty, and they were all demoted and sent down to earth and ended up in different bodies, reptilian bodies. So this is the ancient story of the fallen angels, and the word angel means messenger. Okay, so everybody, when they hear the word angel, they immediately think of these beings with the wings and the halos, and that's just our programming from the artwork from medieval and Renaissance times. But the word itself means messenger. So anything that comes out of the heavens can be called extraterrestrial. So that's where we get that understanding from, that these were extraterrestrials. Um, and then the word gods, well, in Hebrew, the word Elohim, which is plural, means gods with an S. But it's mentioned thousands of times in the Old Testament, and each time it's translated into English, it's singular, G-O-D. Okay, so that creates confusion for the reader, because they're not seeing who's who in this story, in this record, in this history of the interaction between ancient extraterrestrials who set themselves up on this planet, demanded worship, some of them did, and became known as gods. Okay, but gods with a little g. Okay, not the big G. So I unpack who the God of gods is, because there's stories about these battles between them, okay, competition between them, and how the Father God, the God of gods, ended up punishing them. So we know this from the Passover story in the book of Exodus. Exodus 12:12 talks about how the Almighty God punished these lesser gods. And there were, in Egypt, ancient Egypt was polytheistic, which meant that they believed in many gods. And then this is something that we see along our timeline, our history, is the insertion of the idea on the belief of monotheism, which started with the pharaoh Akhenaten. So he came into ancient Egypt when they were all worshiping all these many different gods, and he inserted this belief and idea of monotheism, meaning that there's one God, and that there's like a sun god, and everybody's under this one God. Well, he did what he came to do in terms of his mission, to insert this into Earth's Akashic record, but they didn't accept it. Okay, so the Egyptians, after he died, went back to worshiping many different gods. So this has been an ongoing story and an ongoing battle. And then came Moses, okay, who was also connected to Egypt, and his whole mission was to bring this idea and belief of there being only one God. And that's how we have Judaism. So Judaism believes is monotheistic. And then there was in ancient Persia, Zoroastrianism, which also believes in one God. So we see this through the earth in different ancient cultures. Suffice to say, this is an ongoing history and battle between the supreme God, the almighty God, the God of gods, with all these lesser gods, who we can suffice to say are extraterrestrials.
Yeah, so I've also heard Tom DeLonge talk about this type of thing, that there was more to the Roman gods than like we all think of it as myths, but actually there could have been various gods like that are in battle with each other and sometimes are using humans to allegedly play out their battles.
Definitely. I mean that is the main game, if you want to call it that,
Mhm.
that we're all enmeshed in. The scriptures say that we war not against flesh and blood, Ephesians 6:12, but we are warring against powers, principalities, rulers of the darkness of this present world, and spiritual wickedness in the heavens, who, let's just call them aliens. Okay. And then the rulers of the darkness of this present world are also called archons. So in the Gnostic gospels, the archons were the ones who kind of like ruled the spirit realm. Okay, so all of us humans, today's humans, have to contend with all these different levels of this other realms, whether they be spiritual or interdimensional, and or a bit of both.
As far as like all these under gods, you're saying these are kind of different breeds of aliens fighting with each other, or how can
Yes.
you tell us a little bit about it? How many different breeds or types of aliens are there? And is it like Earth, where on one planet you can have like different races? Like, does that exist from your research on aliens too? Like, could one alien planet have multiple races, or is it basically one race per planet?
Um, According to my research, there's many different types of extraterrestrials and aliens. So I break it down, just again, definition for language sake, so we're all talking about the same thing. So the word alien really means some kind of, intelligence or creature that is non-human. So we tend to call people aliens when they're really human. Okay, like for instance, I'm married to a Brit. When he came to America, they gave him an alien card. The green cards are, he's now a citizen. But I'm just saying that language is, it creates misunderstanding and misnomers and racism. Let's not forget that. Okay, because you're talking about races, and my fourth book unpacks the roots of racism on planet Earth, which I trace to the aliens and to the war over humans and to the war over them between themselves over who gets to control this sphere. So they inserted this because there's multiple races on planet Earth that are representative of the races, the galactic races in the cosmos, in the universe. Okay, so and that's why we're all mixed up. Okay, that's why we have, and we are really like hybrids in many regards now at this stage of our timeline, because people have been, nomadic and traveling all over the place, and mixed marriages and wars and survival and all this kind of stuff, and you end up with today's human, which is kind of like a potpourri of many different
Hmm.
cultures and races. I mean, any person at any given time, if you ask them what is their heritage, where did they come from, especially here in America, right? And we have all these different things. Oh, okay, my, half European, half Middle Eastern, half this, half that, a quarter this, a quarter that. We're We're a potpourri. So, and there's a reason for that. I don't think that that's an accident, because I think that is sort of God's plan to create common community between us, so that we all have pieces of each other in us, so that we're not segregating and separating and having one race over the other. We're all part of the same ball of wax, so to speak. It's my conclusion, on based which I've published in my fourth book, Covenants, that it was the aliens who have been, fighting over who gets to control this sphere and this solar system and this universe, and they created racism on Earth. They put one race above the other. Okay, they created all this type of competition and jealousy that is prevalent in our history, and they've caused wars. And it's my conclusion that it's a Machiavellian agenda. Okay, so Machiavellian means to divide and conquer, and we've been genetically manipulated multiple times along the timeline. So if you go back to the beginning of the Bible, which, forget the religion for a minute, because they've used it as a religious book, but it's also a history book, and it gives us a record. It might be a synopsis. It might not be like exact, but it's still an idea of what happened in the past. And it starts off with the first flood. So in Jake's Bible, that's called Lucifer's flood, which is Genesis 1:1, and the Spirit hovered over the waters of the earth. And that is telling us where the history is now, the timeline is, and where it's left. This is after a flood, a major deluge. And we know from the accounts of Plato that there were civilizations called Atlantis and Lemuria, and they sunk. And that caused a big flood on the planet, which is evidenced, by the archaeology. So they've proven that. And then humans were re-established on the earth, recreated, restored. And I call them the Evademic race, because it was Adam and Eve, so Evademic, and they were established, and they lived, according to the record, to be like 900 up to 1,000 years old. Like the oldest living man in the Old Testament is Methuselah, to 960 years old. So what happened? Okay, we're lucky if we live to be in our 90s. Our telomeres go up to 120, but that's it. We're not living to be 900 or 1,000 years anymore. So there was a genetic manipulation on Homo sapiens, okay, which happened after the second flood. So then we have a story of a second flood, which we call Noah's flood, which is also, in the book of Genesis. And after that, humans didn't live more than 8 decades, pretty much, give or take, right? So something happened genetically. And so it's my opinion that the aliens, okay, which we have this whole history, this whole story, literally written in stone in the cuneiform through the Sumerian texts, that this group of beings called Anunnaki, which basically in Sumerian means someone who comes from the heavens to the earth. Let's call them extraterrestrial, okay? So we have our lexicon understanding of it, and that they genetically manipulated humans. So why did they do that? Well, according to their history, it was to create a slave race, to create a race that had just enough intelligence to follow orders, to have understanding of how to do things, but they took away what was there from the very beginning, which according to the book of Genesis, we were created in the image and the likeness of the gods, plural. So that Genesis account of let us create man in our image according to our likeness, the whole entire sentence is in its plurality. So it's basically saying there's a group of beings, not just one, a group of gods who are recreating man and woman to be put back on the earth in their image and their likeness. And when that happened, it says that they had everything. They walked in the Garden of Eden. They had what I call the glory body, okay, which was like the superhuman body. They had all their abilities, okay. So and we were created with 12 strands of DNA. But then after this downgrade, this genetic manipulation downgrade that happened after the second flood, we only ended up with 2 strands of DNA. And now today's geneticists will look at our DNA and they'll call it junk DNA because they don't understand it. There's something in our DNA that's been disabled. Okay, you follow? So that is the genetic downgrade, the manipulation, the fall of humankind. Okay, which goes back to the Garden of Eden and the curses were doled out on the serpent, who was a bipedal, luminous, intelligent, talking being. Otherwise, the woman wouldn't have had anything to do with him. Okay, let's face it. And he was cursed into the snake. He wasn't the snake. He was bipedal. And who are these beings today? We call them reptilians or lizard men, and there's many different types of them, okay, where there's like dark green and luminous, kind of like iguana looking with all those, aquamarine colors, and some of them are shiny and some of them are dull and they have scaly skin, but they're all bipedal. And I have included multiple stories in my first book about them, even recently, that they were seen on the moon by our astronauts and NASA, okay, which was covered up. So we know that we are not alone here on this planet, and they are part of an ancient race that is laying claims to this earth. So this is all there. That's part of the battle. Okay. And why I call it Machiavellian is because to divide and conquer is the way that they harvest energy. There's something to that. So if you study history and you study wars and you study how people attack and how they wait, for when people are at their weakest, usually when they're divided. Okay, because there's something about us as human beings that when we all come together, in unity, we're very powerful. And they want to keep that power away from us. So they have created all these different things to divide us over, whether it's religion or politics or sexuality, you name it. Okay, or land. So, and why? What you have to ask why? What do they get out of it? Well, we are not, I have to say, we are not the top of the food chain. So even though we may, eat certain things like physically, they live off of something that we generate, which is our soul energy. Okay. And when we're fighting and we're upset and we're emitting a lot of soul energy, emotional energy, passion, okay, they harvest that. And this is what all these ancient stories, all the religions, all this stuff is kind of based on, this battle over our souls. And it's not just in the afterlife, it's here and now. Okay. So that's what the Ephesians 6:12 is all about. And I think that we're living through this. And part of our liberation and freedom and ability to be sovereign has to do with taking that power back from them, okay, through Christ, because he's the one. And see, I was born Jewish, so I'm not supposed to believe in Jesus, but because I had all these extraterrestrial contacts, he was one of them, and he was one that persisted with me. And he showed me that this whole battle, it has to do with him. And I went into all this research, not only in the Bible, but the stars themselves, the constellations. The ancients looked at all this stuff and how he represents the end of this age. And that's why he said to everyone, when they said, when are you coming back? And he said, I will be back at the end of this age. Well, what was he talking about? What age? And this is processional age. It's the processional ages last 2,160 years approximately. So he was born at the beginning of the processional age of Pisces. So we're coming to the end of this processional age of Pisces, which will happen by the end of this century, okay, astronomically speaking. And that is measured by the vernal equinox, when our sun rises on the horizon at the equinox, the spring equinox, in the beginning of the stars of Aquarius. So the ages go backwards. Like when we count, like, forward, Aries, Taurus, Gemini. So it goes backwards. So it's like Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn. So we're getting ready to transition between these two ages. And that is this end game, this end times, what all these prophecies are pointing to, and the last basically 7 years of it, which is going to be what the scriptures say, this end time war, this times of the Antichrist, the times of Jacob's trouble, and Jacob became Israel. So it's all focused on Israel and Jerusalem. And that is one place on this planet that has been fought over more than any other spot on this entire sphere. And the earth is a sphere, just in case anybody there's like a so the Vatican it is involved in not only tracking aliens, okay, incoming from space with their Lucifer telescopes, they're tracking Nibiru. Okay, and Nibiru is this ancient planet that comes around every 3,567 years approximately, and it's part of our sun's binary dead star that we call Nemesis. So we grew up we weren't taught that we had a binary, but most of the stars in our universe, in our cosmology, are binary, if not trinary. There's very few that are just singular. And our sun has a binary twin. It's dead, though. So it's a brown dwarf star that died thousands of years ago. And it has 7 planets. And one of its planets is elongated and tilted and has a very long orbit that intersects in our solar system every 3,567 years. And we have records of this from the past. The Sumerians etched it in stone. They put pictures of it. I share a lot of this stuff. I mean, when we do, if you want, we can look at a couple of pictures.
Sure. If you want to get them, we can put them up to help provide some credibility to what you're talking about.
Sure. Let's see
The
here.
one thing I want to know is, for the purpose of abductions, not to go back, but
Sure.
is is it all races doing these abductions, and is the purpose of it for like genetic manipulation, as you were talking about earlier, to try and slowly get more and more of their genes onto Earth? And is it done by all the races, or is it just one doing it in particular? And just let me know whenever you want me to share the screen.
Yeah, you can look at this if you want to share this screen. This is just showing the Sumerian tablets about the 2 stars, the binary system. Can you see that? What are
Yeah.
the signs in the heavens? Are you able to see that, Devin?
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's up
Okay.
on the screen now.
Okay, great. So as you can see on the left side, that's ancient stone from the past. And then the other photos are coming from space telescopes. Stereo ahead core 2 is focused. There's like dozens of them I can show you. that are focused on studying the sun. We're seeing this regularly, these planets showing up around the sun. The one on the far right bottom, that's actually also NASA from Google Sky. It was blacked out for a while, but Google Sky shows Nibiru with the wings, because they call it a comet planet, because it's a planet that has these two tails and it looks like wings, which is how the ancients depicted it in stone. And it's in, Egypt and Persia and Mesopotamia, ancient Samaria. And then these other photos, like the one at the top there where it says in the Nibiru Truth, that was taken from Earth. Okay, so people are seeing double sunsets all around the planet from time to time. It doesn't happen all the time because of the way it's orbiting. I want to just show you that we have eclipses of one of these planets every 28 days. We get eclipsed by this binary system. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Exoplanets. So everything you're seeing here comes right out of the space telescopes. So we're seeing this huge, gigantic planet. This is like, for scale, about 10 times the size of Earth. And this is just a collage of, showing you that this planet eclipses our sun every 28 days. And it happened on April 8th, during the big total solar eclipse of our sun, when we were watching it through the space telescopes. And I have this pinned to my Facebook page. If anyone wants to go and see it, it's a video of, we see the moon crossing over the sun, and then we see, here it is. Oh, that's great. I can play it for you. Here, watch this.
Okay.
That's the moon eclipsing our sun. Okay, now watch what happens after. That's going from one direction, and now you're going to see another object eclipsing our sun from a completely different direction. And it's not a total eclipse, but it's still passing. And that is the second planet that I was showing you here. So this is part of a whole system. We're seeing this in all the space telescopes. These are just illustrations just to show scale. The bottom are the space telescopes. And this is just happening on a regular basis. So what does this mean? First of all, I'm sure everybody's heard of global warming. And the planet, this has nothing to do with us. Let me just say, all the globalists that are trying to guilt trip humans into, changing your light bulbs, stop farming, all the stuff, all the crazy stuff that they're trying to push and project onto us and guilt trip us like it's our fault that the planet is warming. It has nothing to do with us. It has to do with the sun. The sun is perturbed. The reason why the sun is perturbed is because of this binary system intersecting within our solar system, creating plasma exchanges, magnetic gravitational pulls, and it's going to create another pole shift. Our planet has been, this is not our first rodeo. We've been down this road before. And so this is just an illustration of what we call the black star system. And the reason that it's called the black star system is because the star Nemesis is dead. And it doesn't radiate light anymore like our sun does. However, just as our sun illuminates other planets in our solar system and shines its light on it, like, for instance, Venus or Jupiter, and it looks like a big bright star, it does the very same thing to its binary twin Nemesis. So when Nemesis comes around to the side of our sun, it looks like two suns because our sun is illuminating it. It's not radiating its own light. So in order to see it by itself without our sun, it needs to be seen in infrared. That's why it's called the black star. And these are just some names. It has many names throughout different cultures. I mean, people have been calling it Planet X for the longest time. The Sumerians named it Nibiru because in Sumerian, Nibiru translates to planet of crossing, and it does cross our ecliptic plane and come through, passes the Earth not once but twice, and in its orbit around our sun, and and it's an elongated tilted orbit, so it's not like the rest of the planets, whether in its own solar system, because the Nemesis Nibiru system has 7 planets and Nibiru is the oddball, including here. And this is just how our solar system has been interacting with it. And if you go back to each, which I've done, it's documented in my 5th book, all about Nibiru. The history shows cataclysms, earth changes every time it passes. So this is something that our NASA, our government, I mean, they have known about this for a very long time. In fact, okay, let's go to this. So, it all goes back to Ronald Reagan. And in 1983, NASA sent a probe out to the edges of our solar system that they called IRIS. And IRIS came back with a picture of Nibiru. And they showed it to Ronald Reagan. And that was the beginning of this cover-up that is all part of the UFO cover-up, because it has to do with putting weapons into space, protecting the Earth, and what Ronald Reagan called the Star Wars system after the movie Star Wars, because he was a part of overseeing the SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, which was basically putting weapons in space. And what they told everybody at the time, that this was to protect America from Russia and China. Well, not that that doesn't have merit, but it was more than that. Okay, because they were expecting this planet to come through. And with this planet, okay, comes, here, let me just show you, spaceships. I'm going to get to the part about the spaceships. Okay, so we are not only seeing planets around our sun, we are seeing spaceships. And these are huge. And these are not comets or glitches, or we've had so many people look at this stuff. Even the chief MUFON investigator, David Toon, took on this research and started going through all these old records of the space telescopes, and he was basically separating what was a comet that was passing the sun, and what was he called technosignatures, which is another word for UFOs. And this is just a collage of some of his work showing these spaceships, let's call them space technosignatures, that are showing up around our sun. And like here, these two on the right side in the middle, they actually hovered over our sun for 48 hours and then disappeared. So we are seeing stuff on a regular basis, okay, around our sun that is very similar shaped. Like this one is similarly shaped to what we called the Phoenix lights, which was this boomerang ship that happened it was seen over Utah, Nevada, Arizona in 1997. Okay, we're seeing these long cylinder shaped craft show up around our sun. This shape, oddly, coincidentally, if there is such a thing, I think it's synchronicity, not coincidences, but showed up in this crop circle, and it was also around our sun. And you see this here where it was captured on video from the ISS. Well, I actually have the video of it because one of the astronauts, this ship, which so there's two things going on here. There's like a triangular thing that's around our sun. There's this wheel, which I have the video for this and the video for that. So I'll show this to you.
And what are the videos from? Who shot them?
Okay, so this one, let's see if it works. I'm not sure if it's going to work here. For some reason, it's not.
Looks like it is now.
Is it? Okay. So I just sort of fast forwarded. Okay, so this was taken, there you go. So this was taken from the ISS, the International Space Station, which, by the way, is home to 11 different space agencies. It's not just NASA. So NASA astronauts are under NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and they're really not allowed to do this. But this was an astronaut from Spain who was part of the ESA, the European Space Agency. And he watched this ship, okay, and we've seen it return since then, in May and June of 2022. For 2 months, this craft hovered above the Earth, and it had little scout ships coming and going. Are you seeing it move, or is it just like a...
I'm not seeing it move right now.
I'm sorry. For some reason, it's not.
Okay. When you push it forward, we see it move.
I'm pushing it forward. Okay, yeah. So if you see here, all these little dots around it and this little like elongated thing at the bottom of it, these are ships that are coming and going in and out of it and changing the lighting. So the light is getting bright, and then it's getting dull, and then this was stationary for 2 months. So this astronaut just like, he's watching this out the window from the ISS, and he's like, and this is what happens to a lot of humans where they're seeing this stuff. They're not supposed to talk about it, but they feel the humanity takes over, and they got out his cell phone and he recorded it. And put it on the internet, and once that genie's out of the bottle, it's not going back because everybody copies it. It ends up on all these different YouTube channels, and well, here it is. So we know, and I just put it here that because people were, all of the science fiction movies give us something to relate to. So people said, oh, it looks like the Klingon bird of prey. So it kind of stuck. I'm sorry, the video isn't working very well, but I'll just like go through this so you could see. So you could see he's at the top of the Earth. He's looking at it. He sees the auroras. It gets a little clear. That's kind of a pretty good clarity.
Yeah. It's an unusual shape.
Yes. And we've seen it. We see it. It showed up again recently. So this is another.
By the way, just one question. You're talking about movies and stuff. Do you think this new UFO Steven Spielberg movie is going to be more the real stories about UFOs as what you're saying, which we're hearing the rumors about, or do you think it's going to be a purely science fiction story? Or have you even heard about this new 2026 Steven Spielberg UFO movie?
Well, in answer to your first question, I would say I hope so. And my perspective on science fiction, and I've spoken and written a lot about this, is that they put the truth in these science fiction films. And this was a decision that was made in the 1950s by Majestic 12, who you're seeing this move, right? This video.
Yeah, this is working.
And they decided back in the 50s, they had to prepare the public for what they were dealing with. And they couldn't just come out which would be like, this is the difference between hard disclosure and soft disclosure. Hard disclosure is like government officials coming out and saying, okay, we're not alone, we have contact with this alien race, we know this, that, and the other thing. They're not going to do that. Okay, they're people, and all the efforts made in order to make this happen, that's great. They'll get some carrots, they'll get thrown a bone every now and then, like we had last summer, but they're not going to come out and tell us everything that they know. So they decided, but they have to, for the sake of the public, prepare the public for what is going to come. So they decided to give it to science fiction filmmakers, writers, screenwriters, producers, and to insert this into the mix, so that when people are watching these sci-fi films, that they have something to, when they see it in the sky, or they see the beings, or they see the ships, they have something to relate to. And they'll go, oh, well, that's just like in Star Trek. Now, Star Trek, the original Star Trek, which was the 1960s TV show, 65 of the tech that was showcased in the original Star Trek is now our reality. Okay, and I have this listed, all these different, cell phones, all these devices, all this technology that was rolled out in the 60s, that was rolled out as science fiction, was really future science. And now it's our reality. Okay, so it's almost like getting a message on an answering machine. Like, it sits there for a while, and then then you listen to it, and it's already like old. And that's kind of like us catching up to all this stuff through sci-fi. So in answer to your question, I think Spielberg is going to present a lot of truth that is going to be packaged as science fiction.
Yeah, because there was one rumor saying it would be based on the Secret Machines, which is like a th similar to what you're talking about. What I brought up earlier, Tom DeLonge's To the Stars put out this book, which I listened to an audiobook, Secret Machines, and there's rumblings that this movie might actually be based on that book, which is supposedly put out as fiction, but is really a lot to do with the research that they've been doing, but they just can't put it out as real due to disclosure reasons,
I
apparently.
agree. Yes, and that's very exciting. I'm really glad that he's doing that. And yeah, I mean, his. Let's face it. Okay, so his two big films, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that was a documentary. Okay, that was based on real stuff that happened. And Jacques Vallée was his diary. He was in it. He played a cameo role. So there's, and that's why it's still resonant today. It's not like, oh, some old movie from the 70s. It still has relevance. Same thing with E.T. Now, E.T. was very entertaining. It was good for the kids, but he basically took a real event that had to do with one of these aliens that were recovered from one of the crashes, and there have been many, that they called EB, extraterrestrial biological entity. And he had, like, black eyes. So he changed the eyes to blue, made them like blue human eyes to make them sort of like human looking, cuddly, where the child, he's like in that scene with all the stuffed animals. And this was part of a marketing campaign back in those days, that they wanted to get the public to like these aliens, to warm up to them. But then, and I have this whole story in my first book about what happened with that, because after the movie came out, then something went down underground with the Greys. And Phil Schneider came, he was a major whistleblower, came up. I'm not sure if you're seeing this video. Oh, there it is.
Starting to move now.
Oh, great. Okay. So I'll let you watch it as I talk. And So Phil Schneider came up and said, that they had a skirmish. They had this fight with the Greys underground, and that had to do with an agreement that our military and our government was involved in the Greys since the Eisenhower administration from the 1950s, and that they broke the agreement, so they had a fight. And he was lasered by them. He lifted up his shirt at the Global Sciences here in Denver to show us. He had this this wound that literally went diagonal across his torso, and he got cancer, and he knew that he was going to die, which is why he came out as a whistleblower. And he said, if they ever say that I committed suicide, know that I was murdered. And that's exactly what happened here in Denver.
So you're saying he was working for the government and he ended up getting shot by the gray aliens that gave him cancer through some sort of radiation burn?
Yes, and he was working for a security firm that was working for the government. You know how it is with the Russian doll kind of corporate stuff. But yes, that's pretty much what the story was. But he described the Greys, and he blew the whistle on what was happening underground, and they didn't want that to happen. They didn't want that information coming forward, but it's out there nevertheless. So
Now I know nothing about what's happening underground. I don't want to distract you from this, but maybe you can tell us about that after.
sure. Well, there's a lot happening underground, and there has been on this planet for millennia. So whenever things get uncomfortable on the surface, meaning you can't, like, human life can't live on the surface because the surface is going through some earth change, which we've had before, humans have gone under. Okay, they end up living in caves, they go inside the earth. This is nothing new. Okay, the Bible tells us that this is not only has happened, that they went into the earth. The last galactic war, a lot of them went under, the ones that didn't get destroyed. The Bible, the exo-biblical text, the prophecies in the book of Enoch, they tell us that all these beings went inside the earth. So the earth is like separated by 11 different dimensions. And we know, based on the text, the Bible texts, that some of these dimensions are, okay, heaven, there's the heaven inside the earth, there's the hell inside the earth, and then there's these other ancient breakaway civilizations living inside the earth. So this is nothing.
Would those be crypto-terrestrials?
Yes, the cryptids, and they're doing they're hybridizing. So back to your question about the hybrids. So the aliens have been using human DNA. They abduct men and women for eggs and sperm and skin grafts and cells, because they're creating a hybrid race that is using human DNA. It's also using cattle parts, which is why there's been so many cattle mutilations over the years. So and this is also dovetails and connects the dot to why some of the beings that were recovered in these crashes, like the Roswell crash, for instance, that they found human DNA in these aliens. Okay, they obviously were aliens. They looked like aliens, but when they did the genetic testing on them, they found human DNA in them. So why is that? Because they've been trying to hybridize with us, and that's all part of the abductions as well. The alien human hybridization programs. Okay, and at some point, from what I've heard, and I can't confirm or deny when, is that they want to replace humans with this new race that they're creating that maybe is more spacefaring. But here's the thing, here's the rub, is that they can't create a soul. The soul can only be created by the creator God. So they keep trying to counterfeit everything about how we're made. But there's one thing they can't counterfeit is our souls. And that's where they get hung up. And so they have devised technology to try to I'm just going through. I could show you some of the alien stuff. Let me get this.
Yeah.
They're trying to here Enoch. Okay, so a lot of this stuff's in the books of Enoch, which
But what are
were
they trying to do with the souls?
well,
Just
they
curious.
tried to take pieces of our soul. This is all part of this Machiavellian agenda. They take pieces, they harvest parts of our soul, our memories, our traumas. Okay, there's something about when humans get traumatized, all right, our adrenal glands emit all this adrenaline, and and that makes our blood like powerful and sweet, and they create this thing called adrenochrome which comes out of the blood, and they feed on it and they use it, and they just keep trying to do that. So they create all these horrible situations where they're like traumatizing humans, and it doesn't matter if they live or die. The fact that they are emitting all this soul energy, they harvest it, they're able to somehow take parts of it and put it into somebody else. So this was illustrated, the concept of this, the technology of it, in the movie Total Recall, if you remember, which was I think back in the 80s with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Remember that? And where they went
Yeah.
on vacation and they did this sort of virtual reality to kind of like take on someone else's memories and experience it as if it was their own. This is alien technology. This is not something that was just like made up by I'm sorry, I'm going to just flip through these to
Yeah.
show you the alien pieces.
I also heard you say in another interview that President Eisenhower apparently had some pact with extraterrestrials. I don't know what race of them or multiple races that they could supposedly do these abductions as long as they didn't kill humans, according to what you were saying in that interview.
Right. And that was the original agreement that took place, I believe, is 1954 between the Greys and Eisenhower. Now, before the Greys came along, the good guys, okay, the Nordic, tall, blonde, Venusians, Pleiadians, they're called all these different names. They're human. And they approached Eisenhower and Nixon and they said, we have the technology to give to you so none of your people will ever be sick, have to deal with disease, or they can recover from injury instantly. We can give you this technology, but we want you to disarm your nuclear weapons. And they said no. Okay. So right after World War II, when we dropped the bombs on Japan, it woke up the aliens from the inner earth because they thought, whoa, thousands of years, we don't have any of this stuff. Now, all of a sudden, we did it. And they're now threatened because we share this planet with them. They live inside the planet. Here's another piece just to put out there is that according to the research, most planets are inhabited from within because the planet itself is like a spaceship, like a protector shell from the deleterious gamma rays of space. So the fact that we live on the surface of this planet is not like unique, but it is different than how most of the aliens seem to inhabit inside planets. So I just want to put that out there that this is not some sort of like unusual new concept. So they live inside the planet. The Bible scriptures tell us that they were put there, they were placed there. Okay, and then we have records of humans going underground to get away to survive these cataclysms, and we also have Bible prophecy telling us that in the last days of the end times, that the kings of the earth, they're the rulers, the globalists, the presidents, whatever, they go underground too. And the Lord, it says the Lord is going to turn the earth upside down when Nibiru passes, and that they go underground to get refuge, and they end up getting stuck there, and he turns it into kind of like a prison for them. Okay, so this is all part of this ancient history, and the Catholic Church, the church, what I call the Church of Rome, because Catholicism didn't really get inserted until 1000 AD, and they've been going at it way before that. Okay, well, this is why they've adopted the Babylonian religion. The Babylonian religion was the official religion of Rome. And unlike us, where we have this separation between church and state, they didn't. Whenever they decreed something, whether it was based on their religion, it was their governing policies. And that's how it was during the times of Christ as well. And so that's why today's Vatican has sort of taken over from that. And, why did they name their telescope Lucifer? Well, it is an abbreviation for Large Binocular Telescope, Near Infrared, Utility with Camera and Integral Field Unit for Extragalactic Research. That's a mouthful. So that's what Lucifer means. But there's no coincidence that they invoke Lucifer in their Mass. You can listen to it on YouTube in Latin. They believe Lucifer is Christ because of that mistranslation in the Latin Vulgate Bible that I was telling you about at the beginning. They are sitting on all this knowledge that they've been.
Wait, Lucifer, for someone like me that hasn't gone to church all their life, is that also, people say that's the devil? That's another word for the devil?
Yes. In fact,
Well, okay.
Isaiah 14 is all about this being who we call Satan or the devil or Lucifer, who rebelled. He's the rebel. He's the adversary. And he was able to persuade 1/3 of heaven's angels to follow him in a rebellion. But remember, 2/3 remained faithful. So when the Lord returns at the end of this age, he's returning with the rest of the angels, the armies, the celestial armies of heaven. Okay, to basically straighten all this stuff out once and for all. This is like it's like a final battle, which is, so there's a difference between World War III and Armageddon. Armageddon is like this final battle that has to do between the Antichrist, who is Lucifer, Satan incarnate in the form of a human being, who has all these armies according to the scripture, and then the Lord returns with all of his armies and ends it all. And then the good news is that he establishes heaven on earth. And then the curse is broken. So that means that the curse is broken on the earth, it's broken on humans. The humans get restored back to the glory bodies that I was telling you about. We get to live 1,000 years again. Even if people die, those who are redeemed for the kingdom of heaven on earth come back and live again. All right. So, and then he restores the animals. The animals are also under a curse, and everything gets restored, where it says, and the sun as well. The sun is dying. We see this daily. We have sun. This is probably one of the most unprecedented solar maximum sunspot cycles we've been through. We're getting X-class flares on a regular basis. The sunspots are stretching out. The sun is dying. And that's why the prophecy says that when he returns, he is the light of the world. There will be no more darkness. All of this stuff ends. Okay. And so this is, we're like, it's like a crescendo. But, back to the Vatican, they have known about this stuff for thousands of years. They have an underground library that's 53 miles long with all these ancient texts that they've withheld from all of us. Now, some of them have come to the surface. I mean, these are books that I recommend people, the first and second books of Adam and Eve, which tells the whole story that was truncated into a very brief synopsis in the book of Genesis in the Hebrew Bible. But the Church of Rome replaced the Jews. They were oppressing over ancient Israel and Jews. That's what was happening during the times of Christ. So they were the ones who decided to edit the Bible. And these are ancient Jewish texts that Jews today still look at as truth. And when you read the first and second books of Adam, you get the whole relationship between this battle between the God of gods, who Lucifer is, what the role of these angels are going as go-betweens between us and these two forces of good and evil, and us, okay, and how we were formed and what we were supposed to do and all this. And they don't put that in the Bible. So this is a very good book to get. And then, of course, the books of Enoch. One of the books of Enoch stayed in the Coptic Bible because the Egyptian Christians didn't submit to Rome, so they kept it in their Bible. So for those who are interested in these ancient scriptures, and is there any coincidence here? So as I was showing you in the space telescopes, we were seeing this planet with a hole in it. So I've basically compared it to the Death Star because that has a hole in it. But look at this. This sits in the Vatican, okay, which is the courtyard of the pine cone, they call it. And this was a sphere. It's called Sphere Within a Sphere, which is the work of this Italian sculptor, Arnaldo Pomodoro. What is that about? Okay. And is it any coincidence that they are tracking Nibiru? See, hiding in plain sight. They've been doing this for years. This is nothing new. So I put this together just to show like a collage. I know it's busy, but just a collage that the Vatican started their UFO research group in 2009, which was declared the year of the astronomy. And look at all this medieval and Renaissance art that all has spaceships in it. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So they know a lot more than they're letting on. And
I noticed the crop circles pictures on there, just to digress.
sure.
What are the purpose of crop circles in your research? Obviously, we've all seen that video where it's people doing the basic ones, stepping on those pieces of wood that came out, but obviously these
Doug
things are a
and
little bit
Dave.
more intricate. Yeah.
Yeah, Doug and Dave. Well, you know, in every field, there's going to be people who are going to try to discredit. And that's what they did. They wanted to discredit the fact that these crop circles were happening because of cognitive dissonance. They couldn't believe that something like this could actually happen. But it's just their belief. The fact that it's happening is not dependent on their belief or their unbelief. It's still happening. And every year, like clockwork, we see crop circles, in which they usually start around this time, June, July, and August in England. Now, what is it about England is because England is this ancient portal. There's ancient space. The whole planet has portals. Jerusalem is an ancient space portal. They've been fighting over it for millennia. England happens to be another ancient space portal, which is why they are doing these the crop circles. They show up. Sometimes there are a few, like in Canada, but they're mainly in the same spot every single year. And we have seen video that happened in the middle of the night of these lights showing up over a field. And then the next day when the sun came up, they see this picture. So we know that besides Doug and Dave, and they did do a few hoaxes, we know that most of them are not hoaxes. They're being done by some other type of non-human intelligence. Now, where they're coming from, that remains to be seen. In my opinion, they're coming from inside the earth. Okay? They're coming out of a portal, and they're able to imprint, just like we do 3D printing. They're imprinting symbols into these crops, and and they're so precise too. They're precisioned. So it's a mixed bag. You have to really analyze each crop according to because there are the Doug and Daves out there, but there's some stuff, and they have been showing us um, uh, astronomical stuff. The binary system. But here, let's just talk about, because I said at the beginning that the Vatican, who is the Catholic Church today, is the false prophet in the book of Revelation. So they prop up the Antichrist, who wages war on Israel, on Jews, on Christians for rejecting to worship this beast, which is called the beast. So we know that, and the Antichrist has like 65 different names in the Bible. One of them is the beast. So he comes in, he emerges, according to the prophecy in Daniel, out of this third world war, which are these 10 nations that go against Israel. And he emerges out of this war, and he makes a peace treaty, a 7-year peace treaty between Israel and her enemies. And he allows them to rebuild this third Jewish temple in Jerusalem, which they can't do right now because they're being blocked by the Muslims. So they continue with these animal sacrifices. He stops the animal sacrifices, and he demands them to worship him. And he is the counterfeit Messiah. This is what this whole end time scenario is all about, is to teach this like eternal lesson as to who the real God is, who the real Messiah is, and who these counterfeits are. And it's going to happen in this big conflagration. So the Vatican plays a starring role in this because the Vatican, the Catholic Church, props him up. Okay,
So
so
who that picture there, I know I've seen it before, but it looks kind of like an alien, but is that supposed to be the devil in that picture?
well, it's interesting. Okay, the word the devil. So that's German for da evil. Da evil became the English word devil. And so all of these devil depictions like this one and others that you've seen, with the horns and the tail and the scales and the wings, what are they depicting? Reptilian aliens. So let me get down to this part here. Okay, so we have the reptilians are ancient. They're an ancient race of beings. And when the fallen angels got ousted, when Lucifer, Satan, and his angels fell from heaven, they were demoted and they were sent into reptilian bodies. So they are the archons that are sort of ruling from underground. And we know this from these stories in these ancient scripts, like the Book of Jubilees and all about these fallen beings. And we also know from here, this is the Book of Job, Leviathan, which is a real alien Nephilim being that never died, that still lives inside this earth. And we call him the twisted serpent. In the Gnostic Gospels, he was called Yahweh el-Debaot, which translates to Yahweh the little child, because he was the first Nephilim. He was the first hybrid giant. He had the head of a lion, the body of a dragon. And he has this ancient spirit that is talked about in the book of Job, and how only the Lord himself can subdue him. And he's like this ancient python spirit that creates this narcissistic projection, twists communications. He calls good evil, evil good, and he is involved in a lot of these wars. Okay, and that's what we're seeing now manifest. And let me just show you here. Okay, so we talked about truth is stranger than fiction. So these are scenes from the movie Mars Attacks, um, and even though that was so bizarre to watch, like, they took Pierce Bronson's head and Jessica Parker's head, and they just switched it on these different beings, and they did all this kind of crazy stuff. This is what's happening underground in these laboratories. So Dulce, New Mexico, is known. This is what um, the whistleblowers have told us, is this like a building that's inverted underground, like 7 stories. Like, you go into an elevator and you go 7 stories up, you go 7 stories down, and they're creating hybrids. Okay, so this was in this movie, and it was laughed at and it was made fun of, but they got the idea from someplace. Just saying. So
And
we
what's
know.
going on underwater?
Mm.
You might be getting into that later, but you've mentioned um, under the earth. We always see these craft go into the water. They all seem to be, most of them seem to be transmedium, if not all of them. Is there a portal to get under earth from within the water, or is underwater a whole thing of its own?
I believe so, about the portals. I will show you a slide about that. I'm just on this side of it here. Let me just I'll get back to that. Don't let me forget that. Okay.
I won't.
So I'll just show you a little bit about the hybrid stuff. So if you remember back in the 80s and the 90s, we had the milk carton kids. Where did these kids go? And here's the statistics, okay, from our missing and exploited children in the FBI. A large percentage of them are fought over, between domestic disputes and, taken by relatives and stuff like that. And then there's, the perverts, people who are into pedophilia and they're harvesting children, human trafficking. But then there's this large percentage. This is what I started looking at in the 90s, of these kids that go missing and they're never found dead or alive. They just disappear. Where do they go? So it's my opinion that a portion of them are taken underground, and they're being manipulated and used in the hybridization program. So I just wanted to put that out there. I know that that's kind of hard for people to understand and accept. Maybe not understand it, but accept it. But this is like, some of this stuff is our worst nightmares. Okay. And, the Frankenstein combination of the reptiloid, insectoid, and humanoid, and even plant like DNA, all found in some of these aliens that have been recovered from these crashes. So we know that they're hybrids that are somehow being created underground.
Oh, is that the UFO the one that you were just at? Is that the one where you can somewhat see
Yes.
the drivers of the
Yes.
craft?
Yes. And there's a video that goes to this, and there were 2 pilots, and they were classic looking grays. So
Now, grays, we always hear some of them aren't. I suppose I've heard there's short ones and tall ones, and the short ones are definitely kind of clones that really don't have any soul, supposedly. Is that true, that they're just kind of mechanical?
yes, a lot of that is part of, there's, in my book, my first book, the A to Z compendium on who are the ETs and aliens. So I list that there's, according to the whistleblowers, there's 35 different types of grays. So gray is like a generic term, a species, and they're either insectoid, reptilian, a combination of both. There's short ones, medium, tall ones, and they're not. I specifically spell it GRAY to distinguish between the color gray, GREY, because the grays come in all colors. We see them. There's white, there's brown, there's beige, there's green, there's dark black, navy, shiny. So there's all these different types of grays. And yes, in answer to your question, some of them are cybergenetic Borg-like beings that are soulless. That there's a story in my book about how this abductee went after one of the grays and grabbed their eye, you know, the big almond, black almond shaped eye, and she sort of like, and her hand went right through it like a TV screen, she described. And
Hmm.
inside it was just a bunch of wires, like you see, like some sort of mechanical thing, like an artificial intelligence. So they've been working on hybrids for the longest time. Okay, it's kind of Frankenstein stuff. And some of them are okay, and some of them not so good. You know, so I mean, these are part of actual abductee stories, their experiences, what they had, what they experienced, what they saw, what they went through. And here's this is part of this underground that I was telling you about that Phil Schneider worked in, that was located in Dulce, underground Dulce, New Mexico. And he worked as this engineer. He's an explosive engineer in the facility, and one of the three men that survived out of 60 when there was this glitch and they had this fight with these grays, and he escaped. So this is what was described. This is in the this was published in 1990 in the original Matrix material. This is Matrix 2, which is the abduction and manipulation of human beings using advanced technology. And if you see this bottom picture that has like this wall of all this stuff going across it, that's cow parts, cattle, stomach and intestines. And then you see this pool here. That's like the soup of that's made from cattle blood and hormones that they have been reported to go dip themselves in because they absorb it through their skin, and that's how they eat. This is like, you
Hmm.
can't make this stuff up. It's pretty yucky. But anyway, this is another piece that I've inserted because of this ongoing ancient enmity between the reptilians and the insectoids. And we see this in
So are
nature.
the insectoids different than the mantis, or are they the mantis? Because
The
we always hear
mantids,
about the spring
yes,
mantis breed.
yes, the mantids are insectoids. The mantids are part of
Yeah.
the insectoid race. But the mantids, so here on Earth, we have these, maybe 6 inches praying mantis, right? Well, they're just representatives of this larger race of aliens who are these tall, 6 foot, 6, 7, maybe even 8 feet tall beings that are called the mantids. And they're carnivorous. And they have been reported from abductees, and it's in the materials that they eat human children like we eat chicken. Okay, I know this is disturbing for people to get their head around, but this is what's been going on, which is why some of these children who get abducted never get seen dead or alive. This is my
Why
hypothesis.
wouldn't they eat adults? Why wouldn't they eat adults?
That's a great question. So according to some of this material from the reptilians, is that the children are pure. Okay, the adults are not. We're full of toxins and all kinds of crap. Children are pure.
Yeah.
Plus, they have pure energy. They're after the energy. They're at the life. In the book of Leviticus, it says the life force is in the blood. So there's all these different types of beings, and the being that we call Lucifer Satan, he's kind of at the top. He's at the helm. Now, what makes him different than God? Now, God is omnipresent, meaning he can be in all places at the same time. He can be with you and me at the same time, even though we're thousands of miles away. He's omniscient and he's omnipotent. Now, Satan, the Lucifer Satan character, is not. So he, in order for him to be in two places at the same time, he needs to send his demons. So the demons do his work. And there's armies of them, and there's a hierarchy of them. So there's like princes, which are like we have like archangels, and there's archdemons. And according to the Bible scriptures, they fight against each other, and their strongholds over certain real estate, like locations. Like there's a story in the book of Daniel, okay, where the prince of Persia is fighting to hold the space there, because Daniel was like held captive by the Persians. The Nebuchadnezzar, and he had this dream, and he wanted him to interpret the dream. And so one of heaven's angels, Gabriel, who is the communication angel, wanted to get this message to Daniel so that he could give it to the king so that they could get free. And he couldn't get it through because the prince, it says the prince of Persia was blocking him. So what did he do? This is like angel bureaucracy in a way. He went to Archangel Michael. This is the only time it's even mentioned in the entire Bible. He went to Archangel Michael and he asked him, because Archangel Michael is a guardian, warrior, protective angel, and he's a prince. Arch, and the word arch means prince. And he asked him to restrain the prince of Persia so that Gabriel could get the message through to Daniel. So this took a while. This took a few weeks for all this to happen, and it eventually did. Archangel Michael restrained the prince of Persia. Gabriel got the message to Daniel. Daniel gave the message to King Nebuchadnezzar. They freed the Jews. It ended well. But this is how this battle is being fought, through these different entities. Okay, so the Prince of Persia is back. This is ancient stuff that happened like 3,500 years ago, approximately. And what are we seeing today? We're seeing, and by the way, Persia is now known as Iran. And the Iranians see themselves as the ancient Aryans. That's who they believe they are. So this is an ancient group of beings and a prince that rules over them.
I've heard Iran is actually like the #1 most dangerous country to the US right now. I heard that from a former CIA operative.
This is true.
Actually,
They chant on every given day in their parliament, death to Israel, death to America. They see Israel as the little Satan, and they see us as the great Satan. They are a theocracy, an Islamic regime. And I was alive back, I'm born in the 60s. So back in the 80s, Iran used to be, women wore bikinis. People went there on vacation. Same thing with Turkey. Turkey was like a really cool place to go visit, right? When you see all the ancient sites, people took vacations to Turkey. Not anymore, because Iran is now Islamic theocracy, just like Turkey. So they are now in bed together. They're conspiring. They want to wipe Israel off the face of the map. And they're not too fond about us either. So
yeah, I've heard that. We always think Russia and China, but supposedly they're preoccupied with a lot of other stuff, and China is more of a long-term thing, but Iran could be the most imminent danger, which people don't always think about.
That's true. And it's the World War III is a religious war against Israel, but Russia and China, they don't really care about the religion. I mean, the Chinese are atheists, right? And they don't care whether you're Muslim or Christian or whatever. They don't want you there. Okay. And the Russians are not too fond of the Muslims either, but they care more about the resources and the technology, just like the Chinese. They just care about resources and technology. So they get involved in this end time war against Israel because Israel has technology. And this is where we come full circle to disclosure, because there's Israel wanted to disclose in 2015 that they were in contact with the Galactic Federation.
As that guy said, who I can't pronounce his name, but I remember that
Chaim
it came
Eshed.
out because he wrote a book. Yeah, I am Eshik. He wrote a book. It hasn't been translated yet to English, has it?
Well, I happen to have excerpts in that I have put together in English on, yes, from his book, because his book is he the disclosure stuff is in there, but there's also a lot of astronomy, and so the stuff about the UFO crashes, and he's listed like a
And for
dozen
people
of them.
that don't know, he was head of their space program, right? So he was
Yes.
a very credible person.
Yes, he was the head of the Israeli space chief. He had like a lifelong thing, and so he retired. And when he was 88 years old in 2020, he decided to be a whistleblower and spill the beans because he had nothing left to lose. And he gave an interview to one of Israel's top newspapers, the Yedidot Achronot, which is like equivalent to the New York Times here, and basically told them in November of 2020 that that Israel and America were in working agreements with the Galactic Federation, and Trump knew about it, and that they had joint bases on Mars, that they were working with astronauts, human astronauts, and aliens together on Mars, and that the Galactic Federation said that we, the public, were not ready for disclosure. We were not ready to hear about them, to understand them yet. And Israel wanted to disclose in 2015, and they were told not to. So Chaim Eshed decided to do it on his own in 2020. And I do have the excerpts. If anybody wants it, they could just contact me through my website, and I will send it to you in a PDF for free. No strings attached, just so that you can have this information. Because when I went looking at his book, it's only in Hebrew and it's only in paperback. That means that Geffen Publishing won't even put it out in a PDF, because if you had it in a PDF, you could stick it through one of those translators. But so I just took the excerpts, and he talks about the crashes that are around the world, not just here in America. He talks about the Italian one that you mentioned at the beginning, that David Grush, the 1933 crash, and
So
in
he
northern Italy.
confirmed it. So it has
Yes,
kind of been confirmed. Okay.
yes, and not only that, what's really outstanding is the beings that were found in these crashes. They weren't all grays, and one of the crashes there were humans, and they had oxygen apparatus attached to them. So that's a major piece. That's like, something we haven't heard before. So this what I was showing you here is just some different depictions of the reptilians, draconian beings, how they're able to shapeshift. This is one of their talents, I guess, technologies that they have. Back in the 1980s, 1989, Bob Lazar talked about how they see us as containers of souls. And the Bible talks about us as vessels for God. Okay, so vessel, container, it's kind of a thesaurus word.
Yeah. Well, we
So,
are containers of souls.
yes, we are. Yes, indeed. So this is my whole thing about exposing them as Machiavellian divide and conquer beings, so that they can harvest our emotional energy, which was coined the word louche by the Monroe Institute. And this is not just about blood, it's about emotional energy. It's a sustenance that they feed off of. It's like a hyperdimensional force. And it keeps humanity locked within this frequency prison of these endlessly repeating trauma and war and conflict cycles that we have on this planet, that the Messiah is going to come and end. Okay, so it's like this vicious, it's like a curse. And these are the different types of reptilian beings. You know, they're a hierarchy. So they have like a caste system. So like the top of them is like these priestly types that are involved in all the occult here on this planet. They're the ones that show up in these rituals, that, you know, satanic rituals, blood sacrifice. You have to go back into our history to see
So you're
what's
saying
up
some
with
of
the
these
blood.
occults are real. They actually have connections. They're not
Absolutely.
just people playing around in ropes.
Yeah, I mean, people have to be careful when they're playing around, because there's no playing around. There's, you know, you're going to get something. If you're playing around with a Ouija board, for instance, you're going to get a demon.
Yeah, yeah, I've had that kind of experience.
Yeah. And so only Christ has the power to liberate us from these beings. And this is not about religion. This is about a war. And it's about which side are you on and who is going. We do not have the power to save ourselves. Okay. And people could think all they want, that they're all that, you know, but it's like, it's an arrogance to think that you're going to like change anything about them, because they're much more powerful than we are. But when we are unified, we are a threat to them. So that's why they want to keep us divided. The savior of humankind has the power to free us and liberate us from the bondages of these beings that are holding us hostage on this planet. So that's why everyone who gets saved, we're all saved behind enemy lines here, because the Bible tells us who the God of this world is, and that is Lucifer, Satan. That's why the Catholic Church worships him. They think he's Christ. But Christ is coming out of the heavens according to the scriptures and according to all these different, I mean, it's not just the Judeo-Christian Bible. I prove that this is in all these ancient beliefs about this time that we're coming into. And he frees the planet. He frees us from the clutches and the bondages of these beings. And
Now,
all these names, by the way, they all go
yeah,
way back. Like the Nagas are in the Hindu Vedic texts, by the way.
I was
Go
going to
ahead.
ask you where all these names come from, because a lot of people will look at this and they'll be like, this looks like just a
Yeah, right,
comic book
right.
stuff.
The
Yeah.
truth is stranger than fiction. Well, oh, so we can break it down. So the seraphim is Hebrew. That's in the Old Testament. Naga is the Vedic. The I don't even can't even pronounce it. The Excel Shell Naga. This is a combination of Chinese, African texts, usanguls. Uh, Alpha Draconian comes from the star Alpha Draconis, which is where they believe they came to this planet when when Earth was aligned with the North Pole star of Alpha Draconis, which was thousands of years ago. So,
Okay.
you know, so it's all old. A lot of this stuff is really old. It goes way back into these ancient texts. They've been here for millennia. So this is kind of a little getting into your question. I want to go into the ocean
The
stuff and the
water,
water.
yeah.
So this kind of gives you just a little, you know, idea of how they're like, you know, below, operating way below the surface. Let me see. I'm going to have to flip back up. So this is about the loosh, and this is how we break this. Is that we don't we play by a different set of rules. They want to keep us, you know, in bitterness and holding grudges and, you know, mad at each other and enmity and all the stuff that divides us. And it gets broken when we choose to forgive, which is not easy. Okay, forgiveness is not for It doesn't come easy, and it doesn't even come naturally. It's something that is supernatural that has to come from your relationship with with Christ. Okay, and that's all the New Agers call Christ consciousness. We have to end the cycle, but he comes and he ends it for us. Okay, I'm going to go, let me just see the water stuff. Oh, yeah, well, that's just a little joke from the sun god, because we're having solar flares like on a regular basis. Let me just go find the water. This is, yes, okay, got it. So you're going to start right there. So what started me down these rabbit holes was I saw a ship come out of the Gulf of Mexico in 1995 on the beach of Indian Rocks Beach, which is off the Gulf. I was not alone. 350 other people saw that same craft emerge out of the ocean. They called MUFON. I wouldn't even know about MUFON.
Is that your picture there? Did you take that picture?
On the left, no.
Yeah.
Back in
Okay.
1995, I wasn't sitting on the beach with it. We didn't even have cell phones. I didn't have a camera. I was just watching the sunset. Sun went down and something came out of the ocean. The picture that you're questioning I'm going to show you the whole set. This comes out of the Navy. Our Navy, the U.S. Navy, took these pictures in 1971 in the Arctic Circle of ships coming and going inside the ocean. So this is after the fact. It's taken me years to piece all this together, obviously. So that's what it looked like, what I saw, but I didn't have a camera. But 350 people called MUFON that night, saw that ship from different angles along the shoreline there. And that's when I found out about MUFON. So I went down these rabbit holes, found out this is in the Bible. USOs, underwater submerged objects coming out of the sea in the Bible. So this is old. This is nothing new under the sun. So then they have this, what's called the Tampa Triangle. So this was, the Gulf of Mexico, where I was near Tampa, which is like St. Petersburg. And then the year that I was there, these two objects, these two giant Tic Tac UFOs were seen above the Gulf of Mexico. This photo was taken May 20th of 22 years ago. Okay, so I'm connecting dots to the past. So these are all the water gods. So the Sumerians called it Enkai, which in Sumerian means Lord of the Waters. So how many Lord of the Waters have we had? We have Dagon, who was the fish god of Egypt. We have Neptune, and we have Vishnu, in Hindu, who what came out of the water was considered this fish god. And isn't it interesting that, again, back to the Church of Rome, they adopted all this. Their hat, this hat, which is called the mitre, it comes from Babylon because they were worshiping this fish god, the ancient priests of Dagon fish worship, which the Church of Rome adopted. Isn't that interesting? And then today we have Aquaman. Okay. And the truth is stranger than fiction. I highly recommend people to watch the films, Aquaman 1 and 2. The Aquaman 2, okay, which came out last year, Christmas of 23, is a major soft disclosure film. And here's why. So in my first book, book 1, 4th edition, I published it in August of 23 because I came across this letter that was written by Robert Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein to President Roosevelt before the end of the war. Because what was going on, they were talking about space weapons back then, and they were talking about the relationship with inhabitants of celestial bodies. aka extraterrestrials. And the reason that they wrote to President Roosevelt was because they wanted to influence him to change policy in the United Nations on extraterrestrials, our interaction with them, how are we going to handle them, and should we look at them as an alien nation? The whole entire letter is published in my first book. This is just excerpts that I'm showing you here. So don't you find that interesting that this surfaced last year, and that was
Yeah.
also the year that they made a movie called Oppenheimer, which was the like kind of a biography of Robert Oppenheimer, which won Best Picture of the Year, right? Okay, so what ends up happening at the end of 2023? Aquaman 2 comes out. And how do they end the movie? Atlantis rises, and it's all over the news. Every single news channel on the planet is reporting on it. And Aquaman becomes the representative to the United Nations for this alien nation on Earth, and they accept him and they start to work together. Don't you think that's something? Don't you think that's like, oh my goodness. So where did they get this from?
You're saying that's kind of preparing people subconsciously.
You got it. Absolutely. Because this is what's coming. This is what we're building into. Let's go back. The disclosure era officially began December of 2017 under the Trump administration, when that first story came out about the Tic Tac UFO in the New York Times. That was written by Leslie Keel, Leslie Keene, and Ralph. Yeah,
he has a hard last name to pronounce. Heim or something,
I think. Ralph Blumberg. So they start that was the beginning of it. And of course it was orchestrated by, the you mentioned him at the beginning, Tom DeLonge.
Tom DeLonge, yeah, he To the Stars set up that whole thing.
They orchestrated, but they did it in cooperation with the Pentagon because they allowed.
Yeah.
So Trump, this was under the Trump administration. So they wanted to they allowed this to happen. They allowed this to come out. And then one thing led to another. And now Congress is looking at it. Now there's all these committees. Now there's whistleblowers. It's like the cha-cha. You do a few steps forward and a couple of steps backwards. They've had a few setbacks recently, but you can't put that genie back in the bottle. And the point is that the whole Tic Tac UFO disclosure piece was about these ships that were coming and going out of the ocean, right? So,
Ralph Blumenthal.
That's right, Ralph Blumenthal.
Yeah.
So sorry, Ralph. Okay, so sometimes when I talk, my brain goes a little faster than my mouth. It's just like, oh, okay, just get on to the next thing. I apologize. But here, okay, so this just is a little background, ancient history about these gods and the water and all of that. This I'm going to show you the whole set of this. These were declassified. They were first they were leaked, and then they were declassified from 1971. Arctic Circle, USS Trepang took all these photos. Okay, and this
wow.
Yeah. So that's the Tic Tac that started.
Yeah, the other thing I just wanted to say about, you mentioned Tom DeLonge. If he is working with Spielberg, let's say, for instance, for them to put that movie out, maybe the government could all be involved in that as a form of the disclosure too, what you're talking about for that 2026 movie, since he was also involved in the 2017 disclosure.
Well, that could be, and there's channels within our government that are not all on the same page, as you know, right? Yeah. Some of them want disclosure and others don't. So there's like a inside conflict there. So I guess it all depends on who becomes president this fall. Okay, if there's going to
Yeah.
be change in administration, if Trump gets back in, you bet that that's all going to move forward because I think he's on the side of disclosure.
I think he's on the side of disclosure too, to be honest. And
Yes.
he has the personality of being the guy that wants to go down in history that it happens under, probably.
If anyone could handle it, it would be him. I mean, look what he's been through already. This is the whole set of those photos that were declassified of the from the Navy submarine, and as you can see, there's three different shapes here, three different types of ships that they saw coming and going in the Arctic, in the oceans. So you have the cylinder ones, which we also call cigar shaped. You have the classic saucer shaped UFO. And then you have this sort of like triangular thing. So,
What I don't understand is when was this declassified and how would this not have been mainstream news when it was declassified?
well, that's $1 million question. Why is it not mainstream? Because the mainstream media is not on our side all the time. They put out what they're told to put out. They withhold what they're told to withhold. If they're told from the top, we don't want you running this story, or if you're going to run it, you're going to put it in the very back of your newspaper or as a little blurb on your news report, and hardly anyone sees it, which is one of the reasons why when Tom DeLonge and everyone got together to make that disclosure day of December 16th of 2017, it was on a Saturday. And why did they do it on a Saturday? Because it wasn't a major Monday through Friday news cycle. People are having a weekend. They're not necessarily paying attention to the news. They wanted to do it, but they didn't want it to be like, well, but it ended up all over the place anyway, right? Every single newspaper ended up reporting on it. You and I could talk for an hour on why the media doesn't report on all of this stuff on a regular basis. However, a
It's
broken
even
clock.
worse here in Canada.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're in Canada. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So every now and then you get a carrot, you get a bone. Like, CNN back in the 90s, they used to report, they used to put things in there when they were different. Then they were taken over and then they didn't. And then Fox News started it with Tucker Carlson, and he lost his show, by the way. He was like the only talking head that was following disclosure. He used to have Leslie Keene on all the time. She was like one of his go-to, experts. So it's a mixed bag when it comes to the media. That's why people like you having your own podcast, putting it out there, it's important because what people can't get from the mainstream media, they're going to get from para media like you. So that's why we just have to keep putting it out there. And each time we do that, it's like confirms what's already been put out there. It's corroborating, one thing I can tell you about these photos is they've never been denied.
No, but why would they have approved these to come out? Because these being released and taken from actual U.S. ship, that's pretty good proof. Like that's
Yes.
crazy.
Yes. Well, from what I gathered is that, and how they ended up with me was they got leaked before they got declassified.
Okay.
So, and the same thing with that letter that I was telling you about, which is the whole entire letter is published in my first book, the Oppenheimer-Einstein letter to Roosevelt. That was leaked, and then it was declassified. So this is their way of just kind of covering their steps. Because once it's out there, it's hard to undo it. But here's a report they came out with that NASA was discovering hidden portals around the Earth that open and close dozens of times a day. They published this. This was out in 2012. Okay. On
Wow.
the bottom here, this is an actual photo from the Baltic Sea, USO, that looks like an ancient stone thing that was just kind of
Yeah.
like crashed there and then it just became fossilized. Could be really, really old. And that was what it looks like under sort of another radar. And then you have these movies, Journey into the Center of the Earth, the Journey into the Hollow Earth. And that's actually like just a little cartoon there. But this is to get people ready. And then last year, only a year ago, and this is military times and Navy times. These are like major news articles about the motherships. The Pentagon UFO chief says that there's an alien mothership in our solar system. Now, isn't that interesting that 2 months later, that huge mothership that I showed you earlier, that was taken by the European space astronaut in the ISS, hovered above the Earth for 2 months, May and June of 23. So,
Yeah. Very interesting.
it's like we're getting these messages after the fact. It's almost like you're listening to your answering machine after the message has been left, and now you can use that word. Before, if you used that word, people laughed at you. Ha ha ha, mothership. What are you talking about? You're into sci-fi. This came out of the Pentagon. Okay? So they know that this is a real thing. So back to the old ancient times again. We are seeing, we have etched in stone giants, and their technology was etched in stone, was also gigantic. And our government has a lot of these ancient artifacts that will eventually surface that are gigantic because they were made for beings that are giants. Okay? Like, giant laptops. That's what this is showing. So this is old stuff. It's also in the Bible. Oh, I showed you this earlier. Okay, so this was in the Stereo A telescope, and we call it Ezekiel's wheel because it looked like what Ezekiel described in the book of Ezekiel in the Old Testament of the wheels within wheels, the chariot of the sky. And I actually have the video. Let's see if it works. There it is. You see it? Can you see it moving?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is what you're looking at is the space telescope. This was from 2020. So you're seeing this wheel move through the area around the sun, and then you're seeing it sort of like clear some space. Like there's two things happening here. And it passed right through the solar system. It was recorded on multiple space telescopes.
So you
And
think it's collecting energy?
could be, I don't know. Could be just passing through. Maybe it's on an orbit because if the ancients saw it and then we're seeing it now, And here's the thing with time. So, like, again, the Bible tells us about time travel. So it says in both the Old and the New Testament, 1,000 years is like a day unto the Lord, and a day is like 1,000 years. And if that doesn't sound like time travel, I don't know what is. So that means that
Right.
because we count time the way we do, doesn't mean that they or God or the God of gods counts it like we do. Because we're in
Right,
this.
because they might live much longer, right? I understand, like, they might live hundreds of years, so they might not count it at all like us.
Exactly, or they're forever, like the
Yeah.
Almighty. So this is all in the Bible, So these are like codes to understand the return, because there's a repetitive theme in the Bible about 3 days. So if it's like 1,000 years is like a day, and we're in like 2024, when we're technically in the beginning of the third day, which would be Like if you want to compare it to the story of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, he rose on the third day, but it says that he rose from the dead before the sun came up. And he did that for a reason, because back in those Roman times, they were sun worshippers. They worshipped the sun. It was like a whole cult that went on in ancient times. So he rose from the dead before the sun came up, because he's the son of righteousness with healing in his wings. He's the son of God, SON, because the prophecy says that when he returns, we won't need the sun. He is the light of the world. There won't be any more darkness. So there's a great profound mystery in that. Okay, so back to the third day. If we are in the third day from the time he left, and he said he's coming back at the end of the age, we're in the beginning of that third day right now. If you want to take the primer, 1,000 years is like a day, and a day is like 1,000 years. Just saying.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there. So this is just illustrations here, and this is just a little movie trivia about the movie Contact, and how this machine was originally built for Terminator 2, but they didn't use it until 1997 for Contact, which I just thought was interesting. And this is just my collage about all the stuff that's in. I prove all this stuff in my books, the spaceships in the Bible. And we talked about the books of Enoch, and how Enoch tells us that these ancient beings were buried under Antarctica. Okay, so we have to keep an eye on Antarctica. Stuff is coming out of that.
Yeah, we always hear about UFOs over Antarctica. Could that be somewhere where there could be a base underneath of it?
Absolutely. I agree with that. And there's no coincidence that the X-File movie was based in Antarctica, was the spaceship coming out of underground Antarctica.
And what is
So,
this animal here jumping in and out of the
oh,
water?
that's a fox jumping in a hole, because it's just Fox Mulder. He was
Yeah.
yeah. So Fox is going to Antarctica, and he's just screaming Scully. It's just a little movie trivia. But isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Well, do you have any questions? Is there something?
I think you've gone above and beyond.
That's good.
I know there was a few questions. I wasn't really. I was looking at your show and not really looking at the fan questions, but there was a couple. Um, I know. Hold on a second. Where are the best places to look for UFOs? David wants to know.
Oh wow. Well, the Southwest of America there's a lot of hot spots here. Colorado, Arizona. I should say it in the other order: Arizona, then Colorado, Utah, Nevada, California, and Florida. Always seem to come up in the top 10 monthly on the reports of UFOs in MUFON. MUFON puts out a report. You can join them for free online, and you can get the email, and they put out a report every month. And you can say, well, why is California and Florida always in the top 2? And people say, well, that's because they're heavily populated. That could be. Or it could also be because they're both on the water and there's bases there. And that's why people see more UFOs coming and going, because the bases are under the water and underground. Just saying. That could be another reason. Here in the Midwest, obviously, we don't have the water here like they do on the coast, but there's a lot of underground facilities here. Nevada, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Southern California. So, and
Ahmed wanted. Oh, sorry. You can
no,
finish
go
what you
ahead.
were saying.
Well, I was just going to add to that they're also seen above nuclear facilities. We just had some videos of somebody took in Iran a week and a half ago of a UFO over Iran. And they are interested in the countries on the surface of the planet that have nuclear technology. They don't want us using that.
Yeah, and you touched on that a bit. And is that mostly because of the ones that are supposedly under the ground, how it could affect them? Or is it also, I've heard that there could be some possible defenses against UFOs involving blowing up nuclear missiles in space that can affect their propulsion. I've heard that as well.
Well, I think it's a huge danger. Everything you said, plus, it's kind of it would do so much damage, not only to us and everyone on the surface. It's mutually assured destruction. That's what they
Yeah.
called it back in the 80s, but also to the beings who we share this planet with, who are underground. The radiation. I mean, we have evidence of nuclear radiation in the Middle East, like the Dead Sea, where the place where they call Sodom and Gomorrah. Nothing grows there. The ground, was nuked. There's plenty of places that they have that, and nothing can happen after that. So it's a problem, no matter how you slice it. And we have to learn how to resolve our conflicts without resorting to these weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, and we keep hearing about recycling and all this, but it's like we're blowing up missiles and there's all this stuff happening all the time with wars that I think are going to affect whether we're here a long time more than if we recycle a can or not. But Ahmed wanted to know your thoughts on Egyptian cosmology. Is it similar to the Mesopotamian? I don't know. You can probably read that better than me. I don't have my glasses
I'm
on.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing what you're reading, but Egyptian cosmology is kind of been absorbed into, the Babylonian cosmology, which has become part of, the Sumerian, the ancient Judaism, Kabbalah. It's all connected. In fact, my next book, which should be released this fall, God willing, is all about that. The ancient astrology, cosmology, and why is it relevant now? In a nutshell, because we're getting ready to shift ages. The precessional age of Pisces is ending. We're going into the age of Aquarius. It's kind of like a cycle within a cycle, but they're all connected. That's what I have found in my research, is I'm connecting those dots, and they're all pretty much telling the same story, more or less.
Grandma Daisy wants to know, is Doomsday coming soon?
Well, doomsday, you mean Armageddon? Or, I mean, there's many different, I don't
Yeah,
know,
well, you're
types
into
of
the end
doomsday.
of times prophecy, so like what's how we see Earth as it is now. Is there going to be an ultimate change, or this is this not going to happen in our lifetime?
Well, it depends on, how long you're going to live, but I would say that we're going to see the end of these. We're already seeing these prophecies, these end time prophecies, unfold and be fulfilled like a script. And I can tell you where we're at on the prophetic calendar. So, World War III has begun. World wars don't have to go on for decades. They can be fought and won and done in 2 to 5 years. So I think that by the end of this decade, we will see a huge change. Okay. Plus, we have this system, this other planet that's coming through, and that's a big game changer. Okay. And we also have this, this war against Israel. As I'm showing you here, the UFOs, there's a lot of disclosures going to come out of this war over Israel, because Israel has all this technology, don't forget, they're working with a portion of the Galactic Federation. Someone is helping them. We know based on the Bible, the God of Israel is behind them because he's allowing all this stuff to happen to prove to them who he is and who their real Messiah is. So they're going to get deceived. One of the number one end time markers or prophecies is deception. So this is what Jesus told his disciples. When the disciples said, "When are you coming back? What should we look for? What is the world going to look like before your return?" And this is what he said. So the number one marker is deception. And we are living through that right now. We have war, we have violence, we have murder, we have food scarcities, we have earth changes, flooding, fires, we have pandemics, and according to the Bible, there's going to be one that's going to wipe out, millions of people more than COVID. So that was just a prelude. We have the persecutions, we have the earthquakes and the seismic and the volcanic activity and the solar flares, which are happening almost daily. Fires, smoke, gloom, volcanoes, hurricanes. They're predicting this summer to be one of the worst hurricane seasons. Ocean death. So according to this, there's an asteroid in Revelation. It says there's an asteroid that's going to hit the earth. That's going to destroy 1/3 of ocean life. 1/3. Okay. And then of course, water scarcity in terms of drinking water and water to use for crops, which is going to create food scarcity. And then the final one is this alien invasion from inside the earth. So we've been hearing for years about some fake invasion that the government is going to do. And forget that. Even if they were thinking that, even if they could pull something like that off, it would never happen because the real aliens would show up. But this is biblical. This is prophetic. This is something that was put inside the earth in the last galactic war that is going to get released at the end of times, which is what the Bible calls the tribulation. So yes, there's going to be lots of different doomsdays happening. But here's the thing, is that people have to put their focus on the age to come. What happens after, there's worse things than death. I always tell this to people. There are people suffering on this planet that wish to die. Death is not the end of things. Okay? What matters is whose side you're on. So getting your soul, your life, your mind, your body, your spirit right with the creator of your soul, that's the best thing anyone can do right now. And, live each day as if it's your last, and one day you'll be right. Because all this stuff, there's nothing you and I can do to stop this train. It's already left the station. We're in it. It's just a matter of time. And then this planet that is going to pass the Earth, Nibiru, it's not going to hit the Earth. Nibiru will pass twice. It's on its way around the sun. The sun will give it energy, and it's going to catapult it back out into its orbit, and it's going to pass the Earth the second time. And according to the NASA whistleblowers, it will take 24 to 36 hours for that to happen. Call it a day, okay? Which is what the Old Testament calls the terrible day of the Lord. Okay, and the Isaiah 24 talks about the Lord turning the earth upside down, which is biblical vernacular for pole shift. So the earth changes, there's going to be water taking over land masses emerging out of the water. We're going to see the meltdown of Antarctica. A lot of disclosure is going to come out of Antarctica and other parts of the planet too. So we are living in it. How long it lasts? Here's another piece that has to do with time travel. So the scriptures say that if it wasn't for the elect, those days are going to be shortened, which means that each time our planet has these really intense earthquakes like 8s and 9s, it shortens our day. It shaves like seconds off of the axis of the earth turning and making it a day. So time is speeding up. because of that, and it's also shortening. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. It's something that I may have to watch again to get my head around some of these concepts. But you've also had some direct encounters with extraterrestrial beings. You went to school in Israel. Can you talk to us? I mean, you already talked about seeing the ships coming out of the water. When were these when was this contact with the beings?
Well, so I went to school in Israel in 1976. I'm kind of ancient, I guess. It's a long time ago. I was there from 1976 to about 82. I graduated in 79 from Sde Boker, which is in the Negev. And then in the 90s, I met Zachariah Sitchin, and that's the some of his research I dovetail into because he talked about Jerusalem, and then he believed that that was like a portal, and based on what it said in the Sumerians, and then these are articles that came out recently establishing the fact that yes, it's an ancient portal in this ancient city. That's just to corroborate some points. So when I have some slides I can find for you. So when I was living in Israel, in the Negev, we used to go at night, and there wasn't that many satellites up that back then. There were some, but we used to see spaceships, and we saw them landing. Like we didn't actually see them like physically land. We saw the effects of the land, and they would like kick up all this dust, and then in July of 79, I was waiting on a visa to go to South Africa. I was out, sitting in the sun, and it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And out of the sun came this being who just, he basically said, I am the Messiah, follow me. So, I did. I was 18 years old. I was kind of gobsmacked by what I saw. And one thing led to another. And I found out that, he was Yeshua, who we call Christ. Um, and of course, I was raised Jewish, so I'm not supposed to believe in Jesus, but he pursued, oh, here it is. He pursued, and this was my time in Israel. That's where I lived in Sde Boker. That's the Wadi, which they called the mini Grand Canyon because it was, it's kind of this vast canyon. And there's a place in there called Nachal Tzin, which is where the Bible, I didn't know this until way after the fact, that's where the story in the New Testament where Jesus was tempted, it fasted for 40 days in the desert. That was the desert he was in. That's where he hung out in Nachal Sin, and he was tempted by the devil, who showed him all these, kingdoms of the world and said, "Oh, if you bow down and worship me, you can have it all." He never once disagreed with that or challenged his authority to do that, which proves the fact that I've proved in my books that he is the God of this world. So that when anyone who gets saved is saved behind these enemy lines. See, it's not all about this life. It's about really what's important is planting seeds for the next one, investing in your eternal soul in heaven. And this is just a battlefield that we all end up on, and we have to pick sides. So that's what happened to me there. And that being, who is Yeshua, I've seen 6 times since then. And in 2010, I had a near-death experience. And I saw him again. And that's when he told me to rewrite my books about the aliens with him in it. So I did. And it's turned into 6 books. Book 6 should be out by the end of this year. So what else can I tell you?
How did you end up from New York City to Israel as an orphan? Because usually orphans aren't traveling all that much.
Yeah, good question. So I was sent to a boarding school. That's how I ended up in Sodebo Care. I had a step family, and half of them were in Israel. So that's kind of like they were sort of my guardians, because I was underage. And yeah, my stepmother just didn't want me. So they sent me to a boarding school, and that's how I ended up in Israel because they were Jewish. So they thought that was the best thing to do for me. And so one thing led to another, and I left Israel and went to South Africa. I spent 2 years there. I got a degree from Sodebo Care in social sciences and biology, and I assisted these missionaries in South Africa before the end of apartheid. Um, and that was what I did for 2 years, and then my visas expired, and I went back to New York City in 1982. So I was there from 82 to 90, and then in 1990, I moved to Florida. And then in 96, I came to Colorado, and here I am. So there you have it.
And yeah, I'm sure we could do a whole thing on what you went through as a kid, but as far as the near death experience, what was caused by like how did you almost die when you had that near death experience?
Yeah, well, good question. So I was being traumatized by my neighbors, and it was a very long story. It went on for about 15 months, and I basically lost a lot of sleep, and so much so that I just couldn't sleep. And then I ended up with a heart attack because when I had adrenal exhaustion. So when you don't sleep, you're out of adrenaline, and then your adrenal glands start pumping too much cortisol, and it can cause your heart to stop. And that's what happened to me. So fortunately, I was saved. They got me to the hospital. I was in the emergency room. They put me on a machine and all that, found out what happened. My organs were fine, except I was suffering from adrenal exhaustion. I blacked out, and I saw both my parents, who were both deceased, my mother and my father, first time together ever since I was a child. So I thought, oh my God, I must be dead. And then this hand took me, and it was Yeshua. And then they just kind of faded out, and it was just him and me. This is sort of my illustration of what I saw and experienced. I was on this
Hmm.
like bright green field, green grass, bluebird sky, and it was just him and I. And he just took my hand, and we just walked and talked. And he told me, I was writing this book about aliens, and I was very despondent to all the Christian stuff. I had like kind of fallen away. I wasn't really involved in Christianity at the time. I was doing astrology because, Christians, they're very anti-Semitic. I felt a lot of rejection. I felt a lot of judgment. So I didn't go to church. And I was writing this book about the aliens. And so Yeshua said to me, I want you to rewrite the book with me in it. So I did, and that's what sort of 2 years later, my first book came out in August of 2012, and so now I have a lot of scripture in the books proving this story. But I still, I'm not a religious person. I'm just saved by grace. I make no claims for anything else but him. He saved me, and so I don't really have I'm not afraid of like death, like what's going to happen when I go to the other side. I know I'm going to see him. So right now, I just want to get my material out to help as many people as possible to connect dots, to connect people to him without the religion. Because I think religion is a big stumbling block, and he just wants relationship. He wants his souls back. He wants to save everybody. He wants people to call on him and talk to him, and he's real. He's alive. Mary Magdalene said, well, he's alive. He's still alive. I've seen him 6 times, and I can attest that he's alive. He's as close as
Now, yeah.
that's it.
Did you end up moving after that, or did you still deal with the neighbors after that near-death experience?
Oh, great question. Yes. Well, they moved. Okay. So something happened and they decided, I mean, we were involved in a lawsuit and all of that. So they moved. It got settled after they moved out of court. I was able to sort of like heal because it took me about a year and a half to get my body functioning again normally. And then I had the strength to move. And yes, we did move in 2014 to another
Well,
city. I'm in
yeah,
a much better place. I live on a hill and everything's good here. Got great neighbors. I'm so grateful.
and I've been to Colorado before, and it's a great state. I hope to go back again, but
Oh, great.
very, very nice people there in general, very open-minded people, I would say, and beautiful scenery.
Yes, it is. It's a wonderful place to visit, especially in the summertime. If you ever come, let me know. We can hook up.
I
The
definitely
mountains
will.
are great in the summer. Well, you know, if you're in Canada, summertime is the best time for the mountains, right?
Yeah, I don't go anywhere in the summer because the winters are brutal, and the summer is when it finally is nice here.
And the flowers and everything blooms and we get these hummingbirds that come in from Mexico. It just amazes me that they fly all the way from Mexico just to come here for the summer. And they're so little and powerful. And anyway, that's what I'm hearing now as I'm speaking to you. They're just chirping around.
Very nice. Well, I appreciate you taking nearly 2.5 hours to talk with us. You gave
Oh,
us a
well,
lot of
time flies.
information. You answered all the fan questions. There was a lot of fan comments as you were talking. I appreciate the slides. Is there anything you want to say to the where we can find your book? Your website's up on the screen.
Oh, great. Yes. My website, I'm also on Amazon, Canada, and worldwide. So you could just key in Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo. And there's 5 books available in paperback and Kindle. And if anyone needs the audio, I sell the PDF on my website. Then they can stick it in their audio programs. I get a lot of requests for that.
Yeah, nowadays it's a lot easier to just listen to them. I like to listen to them when I'm falling asleep. Although with UFOs, that can result in nightmares from time to time.
Yeah. I hear you.
So I'll let you close this off with whatever message you want to leave the fans with.
Well, connect with the creator of your soul. Your soul already knows who he is, but he does have a name, and you can call him. He has many names, but you can call him Yeshua, and he will answer. And he's available to everyone 24/7. You don't need any kind of special degree or special contact. He wants to have relationship. He wants to restore humankind. So I hope that helps whomever, and just have faith. It's all going to work out in the end.